Welcome to the show Gold Squadron Gays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays talk about and review their favorite Star Wars content while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm your other host, Charles Rogers, and I do want to apologize preemptively to everyone, except I'm not apologizing. Go fuck yourselves. Because we did get this week's slew of announcements regarding Dragon Age the Veilguard, and I will not be shutting up about this game, ever for any reason. I will shoehorn the Dragon Age series into everything going forward.
And I have no idea what that even is, so that's how relevant it is to my life.
It's about to become way more relevant to your life. We've only been waiting for this game for 10 years, Bradley.
I've been waiting for it for 0, so...
They told me that I can fuck an old man, so... But I cannot fuck the skeleton with goggles, apparently. But I can fuck the old Peter Capaldi-looking guy.
So what is the point
Vincent Price-looking guy. The point of the game is to fuck hot people, Bradley. It's...
Oh, okay.
A good RPG, here's the thing, Bradley, I'll explain this to you. A good RPG, like Baldur's Gate 3 or Dragon Age Inquisition, is not about playing the game, right? It's about getting dicked down by hot people. And then you throw some D&D stuff around that.
Sure.
And that's what makes the appealing cocktail, right? It's like a cocktail. The getting dick down is the alcohol part, and then everything else is the mixer you put in it.
So what is Outlaws going to be? Because I want a good Star Wars RPG where you can fuck in Star Wars.
Unfortunately, that is not that. This is generally a fantasy RPG, but Outlaws looks... So here's my concern about Outlaws, is it looks good. It looks good is the thing. And I've played enough Ubisoft games to know that when they tell me Ubisoft open world game, I kind of know what that is, and I'm not sure how Star Wars fans are going to react to that. I've been playing Ubisoft games since the first Assassin's Creed, so I know how they work. But I don't think Star Wars fans are going to know how it works.
Right.
But whatever, Kira is back, so...
That's all that matters.
That's all that I care about. Kira's here. I just really need the Sixth Ken to be in this. I need a Dr. Aphra cameo. Like, I need to see Just Lucky. Like, this is what I need, Bradley. This is what I need in my life.
I'm surprised they didn't make Aphra, like, the main character. Like, you could do, like, a...
I suspect that there are two characters who kind of came from the same place. Because the lead character of the game does have some Aphra-like qualities to her. But also, Aphra kind of has her own story going on.
Fair.
In the comics. And this one, they kind of... It sounds like they want it to be more open-ended. Like, you can make choices throughout the game. I just want to see an Aphra cameo at some point, and an Aphra show. I just want more Aphra. I'm so bummed that her comic run ended. I need more. But Alyssa Wong's also now off writing stuff for the High Republic, so... speaking of the High Republic, Bradley, did you know there's a TV show out?
There is a TV show out that...
Yes, it's called Young Jedi Adventures. It's really good, and it's getting a second season.
Oh, God.
Which we already knew.
Yeah.
Because one of the recording people posted about it on Twitter, and then Collider wrote an article, specifically Hope wrote an article, specifically because I pointed that out to her. And so you should also read that article and just follow Hope in general online, because she writes a lot of articles, and they could use your clicks. But we kind of already knew it was getting a season 2, but... StarWars.com announced that they're getting a season 2 recently.
That's cool.
Looks really good. There's some new characters. I'm not really quite sure how they're going to deal with this show, given the stuff that happens in the High Republic, how they're going to explain some of this stuff. But, I mean, maybe the show will end before the end of Phase 1. Like, that's my theory.
Wouldn't that be, like, awkward? Like, if they were, like, they end the show, like, this little preschool age show, and then it's, like, in the next scene after the finale or whatever, it's, like, the thing that happens in the second book happens in the second book.
Oh, no, I'm talking the third So I'm going to try to explain this in a way that avoids spoilers.
Right.
At the end of Phase 1, which is the first 3 waves, so the first 3 adult books, basically, and then everything that surrounds them, something big happens that basically changes the way people can move through the galaxy. And when that happens, it's something that every piece of media set in that era is going to have to reconcile with. So I'll be curious to see where they actually end Young Jedi Adventures. But it's also, I think, like a year between phase one, between Light of the Jedi and Fallen Star. So,
That's true. And a preschool age show can like a year in a preschool age show could be like 6 years of actual
oh
television. So,
yes, oh
I
yes,
mean,
that's how I think they're going to get away with it because they
they're
end
just never
season
gonna
one
get
with
past a
the
certain point. Yeah.
they end season one with the Starlight Beacon dedication. Although it'd be really funny, really funny to have the Padawans be like off to the side and constantly be missing these big events. Like they completely miss the Republic Fair. They don't even notice the redacted thing at the end of phase one happens. Like they just don't know. Like nobody tells them. That's so funny. Or the younglings in the show. Although they are getting a new Padawan character, who I'm being informed is not Reith Silas, just looks a lot like Reith Silas. Bradley, you're not there yet. Also, the Acolyte's out. It's good. I will have a lot to say about the Acolyte. Bradley and I had a lot to say about the Acolyte to each other before we hit record.
We'll talk about it, we promise.
We will talk. We will get to it. I did my little checking to see, and we have about 2 more months left in the Bad Batch.
Okay.
Look, I like the Bad Batch. I really do. I badly want to talk about the Acolyte.
I agree.
Acolyte is so fucking good. Oh my god. I'm thinking about replaying Knights of the Old Republic 2 now. There's a preview of some of my thoughts on the Acolyte. I guess that's as good a transition as any, Bradley. That we have to talk about the Bad Batch now.
Well, let's talk about it. This week, we're covering The Bad Batch Season 3, Episode 7, titled Extraction. As enemies close in, the Batch must evacuate a stronghold. Charles, what's one thing you liked about this episode and one thing you did not?
One thing I really liked about this episode was that they had dealt with a lot of the setup in the previous episode. And we kind of knew what's going on. We kind of knew the scenario. We knew who everybody was. And it was basically just action. Like, my notes are really short, but my notes are really short because a lot of this episode is like, they fight, they run,
Right.
they fight, they run, and it's all very fun and visually impressive, and they're doing a good job, and I can actually see what's going on in this episode, which is nice. That is another thing that I liked about this episode, is I could see it and comprehend the action I was seeing on my screen. But I did like that most of the, like, reminding us who Hauser is, kind of explaining what's going on with the CX troopers, all that happened in the last episode. And I know I was a little down on the last episode for being all set up all the time, but it does pay off here when you watch this episode. One thing I didn't like about this episode, we'll get to it, but the ending kind of fell a little bit flat for me. It's going back to that thing of like, why did we spend all this money and all of this time on this particular element of the plot? Really for it not to change a lot of the meta plot. Like the trivia guide notes at the end of the episode sort of starts a particular character down a particular path that we're going to see the conclusion of in Star Wars Rebels. But we don't really get to see a substantial amount of that path. So the ending felt a little flat to me, with the exception of Rex and Hunter's conversation, which I really like and we'll get to it. But for the most part, it just sort of like, it ends. We kind of get the sense of where one of the characters is going, but now we're off. And also knowing too that we won't be back to this ever in this particular show. We're done with the clone insurgency plot. That's never going to come up again in this show, except for some offhanded references in the finale and some offhanded references that's not going to play a huge role. So what about you, Bradley? One thing you liked and one thing you did not.
I actually had the exact same thing.
Really? Again,
yeah.
I feel like after 3 years, what's happening here, Bradley, is that you're waiting for me to do the thing I liked and disliked and then saying, I agree with all of that. That was mine.
No, I mean, I wish I could disagree with you, but unfortunately, this episode, you're right. It was just the end of last week's episode, really. It wasn't like anything special. Like, it couldn't stand on its own.
This could have all been one episode. I'm glad it wasn't. This could have all been one episode in the structure of the two. This was basically just the climax of the last episode.
Right.
But they stretched it out to make it more interesting, and I did like that.
I would like to see, though, like as a editing challenge for some people, maybe if you're trying to practice editing, like if you would take these two episodes and try to combine them into one episode. I'd be interested to see if that's an interesting challenge for people, just to see if you could make it coherent and hit the same beats and then still keep it at a reasonable runtime.
You would want to aim for about 22 to 28 minutes
I would see if it would be an interesting challenge if you could shrink it down at least. And maybe not like a solid 22, but like maybe like a little bit stretched out just because you're combining two episodes. But I'd be curious to see if people could do it because yeah, this one you just wanted it to kind of like I'm glad they did them both back to back, honestly, because if they had it, I would have been like, we waited for that. Like that was the ending. It was so anticlimactic. You're right. It was just very much like it was building and building, and then it was just kind of like, well, he lets them go. The end.
I mean, the real meat of the ending, we'll get to it. The real meat of the ending is the waterfall fight.
Agree.
That's sort of the end of the episode, like emotionally.
Mm.
And then the other thing is just kind of, it honestly feels like the confrontation at the end of this episode outside the ships is really just there to set up rebels.
100%.
Like, it's not there to do anything for this plot, but we'll get to it. You only have 4 sections for us this week.
I do. I've combined a lot
Because it's really
like
hard
said,
to break this down into 6.
I like you said, it's just mostly it's like they shoot, they fight. So I just do my best to just kind of truncate it all together, and then hopefully you got most of your bits together.
I never have my bits together. I've been doing this podcast for over 3 years, and I still have not gotten good at it.
Section 1. We begin in the ruins of the Teth Monastery. CX2 has survived as well as the Bad Batch. The Batch take an underground tunnel to escape, and Commander Wolf and his troop arrive to the ruins and are surprised to find that the enemy are clones. Wolf has his team begin to seal off the tunnels, and CX2 defies Wolf's authority and goes after the Batch. They are confronted, but Crosshair manages to slow CX2 down. They reach the vessel and begin to escape, but CX2 fires at them, damaging the ship's engines, and they crash into the jungle.
Wow, you did actually cover a lot of the episode in that one section right there. Thinking all the way back to the episode 1, season 1, Aftermath, I found it really interesting that Wolf didn't know that the insurgents they were going after were clones. And I'm thinking back to the Onderon stuff in Aftermath, where they were like, go deal with the insurgents, and it turns out it's Saw Gerrera and his people on Onderon.
It's just humans. Yeah.
It's just, yeah, I found it really interesting that Wolf also was not told. And it's really obvious because like they literally sent him here, so he's going to find out that they were clones.
Yeah, you have to think that this is just a bad move on the Empire's part, because like I know that they think that the clones are just clones and they're just dispensable and like whatever, but like they have to know that like a clone seeing another clone dead like is going to be somewhat psychologically affected to them. Like even though he's a commander and he's like in charge of his like group, like they're gonna see a bunch of dead clones everywhere and they're gonna go, oh shit, like what's going on here? Like we have to take a step back and think about this for a second. Like, and that's why he gets so mad with CX2, because he's just like, what the fuck did you do? Like, this was supposed to be a like violent kind of lethal thing. Like, we're supposed to try to capture Omega and then be done with it, not like kill a bunch of random clones. So he's pissed. Like,
yeah, and it also segues nicely into my next note, which is he has this conversation where he like tries to bully the CX trooper.
Right.
Like he tries to do the clone commander thing of I'm in charge now. And the CX trooper's like, okay, whatever, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like, the target's alive. I don't know what the fuck you want from me.
It's also weird when Wolf asks him, he's like, what, like, division are you with? Or what are you doing? Like, and he's like, I can't tell you, that's classified. And he's like, I'm in charge. I am classified. What do you mean? Like,
it's very the Harrison Dula moment from episode 2 of Ahsoka. Is like, well, I'm unclassifying
I'm unclassifying it. Yes. That's exactly what it is.
I think you'll find I have the authority to do that. Yeah, some of the best stuff in this episode, honestly, to me, which is interesting given my thoughts on the final scene, but some of the best stuff in this episode is the Wolf interactions, where he's trying to basically swoop into this op, try to run it right, and then there's a CX trooper running around fucking blowing shit up. It's hilarious to me.
Yeah,
and we'll get to why that's hilarious to me in a later scene.
Yeah, because if you think about it, like everything theoretically only goes wrong because CX2 is doing whatever CX2 wants to do, because he's got this vendetta, or not vendetta, but he's got these orders from someone else that Wolf doesn't know about, and then they're trying to he's trying to follow his own orders, but it's fucking up the actual mission, which is extraction.
Yes. And it's also, again, a really good indicator of why the Empire works and why the Empire fails, is because it's a lack of teamwork. It's a lack of cooperation. It's a lack of understanding and trusting each other. And like the clones also generally don't function well in this system either, because they're actually professionals who know what they're doing. And most of the troopers we see throughout the rest of things the Empire has appeared in, most of the troopers are just sort of grunts who will do what they're told. And most of the officers are either stupid or petty or ambitious. And that's the kind of system where those kind of people are going to thrive in. Not somebody like Wolf who actually knows what he's doing. The stormtrooper who radios in is the only person in this episode that is not D. Bradley Baker or Michelle Ong. Just as a reminder, Michelle Ong is voicing Omega and D. Bradley Baker is voicing every fucking body else in this episode. Did we add anyone new? Because I just listened to our episode.
Yeah.
I just double checked our episode. He's voicing less people in this episode because a bunch of the clones are dead now.
Oh, right.
But last episode, we did list off all of the voices he's doing in these 2 episodes.
Okay.
Which was very...
I don't think there's anybody new there.
There's nobody new, but we've lost a bunch of the clones who died.
Right. So he's doing a little less work this week.
The only non-D. Bradley Baker and Michelle Long person, David W. Collins, is the voice of the Stormtrooper. Just as a reminder, if you don't know who David Collins is, David W. Collins he is a sound designer who has been working at Lucasfilm since Star Wars Demolition in 2000. He worked in voice processing, according to IMDb, and then his first sound designer credit for them was Star Wars Starfighter in 2001. He also did uncredited voice work for Star Wars Demolition, so he's been doing voice work for them for the same length of time. Worked mainly on the video games until 2018 and Star Wars Resistance and Star Wars Forces of Destiny, where he jumped over to also working on the TV. But generally speaking, if there is a Star Wars, he is probably involved in it in some capacity. He may not be involved in every episode, but he is involved in it probably in some capacity. I am finding very little things on here that he is not involved in some form. So that is who is the voice of that Stormtrooper. If he's not involved as a sound designer, he's probably involved as an actor. Because I looked and I was like, oh, he was not involved with the sound design in a way that I can find for Ahsoka and the Acolyte, but he's additional voices for those. He generally is involved in the sound design for animated shows. So he's the sound designer on The Bad Batch, Tales of the Empire, Tales of the Jedi, but he's also on some of the live action shows like Mandalorian. Cool guy. Really cool guy. I do like Omega's response to Hauser jumping up on, Batcher jumping up on Hauser, and she's like, oh, don't worry, he only bites half the time.
Well, that's because Batcher knows a good face when she sees one.
Yes, she does. I'm just reminded of that Vine sound, that Vine that was like,
hey, how y'all... Get your fucking dog, bitch! It don't bite. Yes, it do!
Yes, he do!
Oh my God.
I miss Vine sometimes. That was a happier time on the internet.
It was a simpler time.
A simpler time. Now we have our TikToks. Oh God, I remember Musically. Lord in heaven, that one. I've been on the internet too long, Bradley. I think the internet might have been a mistake.
I remember when the YouTube came out.
I actually remember when the YouTube came out. I remember because I was in late high school and we had never seen anything like it. The idea that you could just watch random videos on the YouTube, and the idea of a viral video was just becoming a thing. I remember some of the earliest quote unquote viral videos that would be on YouTube. Oh man, that was crazy. That was a crazy time.
Section 2. Wolf and his troops prepare to pursue the batch. He is angry at CX2 for defying orders, and CX2 argues that he prevented Omega's escape by shooting the ship down. The batch exit the crash alive, and Hauser notices that Crosshair seems to care for Omega and softens towards him. Wolf orders his troops to monitor the batch's comms and is notified CX2 has run off. In the jungle, Wolf forces catch up to the batch, and the Bad Batch use smoke bombs to distract and take out some of his men.
So here's where I noted why the relationship between the CX Trooper and Wolf is so interesting to me. Because the CX Trooper acts a lot like the Bad Batch.
Okay.
Because Wolf is doing the straight-laced by-the-book thing. He's doing what he should do in the Grand Army of the Republic. And the CX Trooper is trying to accomplish the mission, fuck the rules.
Right.
So the CX Trooper is kind of being like how the Batch was in their first appearance all the way back in Clone Wars Season 7.
No, that's true, yeah.
So this is kind of a dark mirror of that, while we see the Batch fighting alongside the remains of the other clones to try to escape and working together and learning to trust each other. Over on the Empire side, the CX Trooper, acting exactly like the Batch and pursuing his mission and blowing stuff up, is met with hostility from Wolf.
Right.
So they're mirrors of each other. They're parallels. It's like poetry. It rhymes. I continue to love Omega and Crosshair.
I do love them.
They are my favorite dynamic in this show.
They really did well this season, I think. That was the one thing I have to give this season the best chops, is that the Crosshair Omega stuff is the best stuff in the entire season. I mean, it really is.
It's absolutely note perfect, and we'll get to it when we get to the finale. Part of how the finale is earned as well as it does is all of this work that that the rest of the season does with Omega and Crosshair.
I noted that in this section where Crosshair is talking to Omega, he does say, "Do you have your crossbow?" And she says, "Yes, I have it right here." And then she brings it out and she kind of prepares it, and like even throughout the rest of the scenes she has it at the ready, but we never see her use it.
You noted that we never actually see her fire it.
She never fires it. She does have it drawn at one point, however, does not release.
Okay.
Even though Crosshair specifically says, "Do you have your crossbow?" "Yes, I have my crossbow." Okay, great. Like, it's like, what? Like, why was that?
I just doesn't use it. Okay.
It's definitely a relic of editing. I definitely feel
apparently
like something
so
there.
I was looking at the StarWars.com trivia guide, and the only trivia I thought of any note, and I didn't even include it in my notes, but it was the only one that I was sort of like, that's interesting, is apparently this scene with Omega and Crosshair was added towards the end of production. This was not in the original episode, and they added it later on. Interesting. I also love the conversation between Crosshair and Hauser, where Crosshair is like, "I realized how disposable I was," which, yes, you are, baby. You're not special.
That's right.
You're not a super special boy anymore. The Empire doesn't care. Didn't care who you are. It's just going to use you and discard you because it does not see you as any more than a clone. So congratulations on catching up with the rest of us. God, the Crosshair character development is so fucking good in this show. He has such an amazing arc throughout the entire 3 seasons. It's like other Star Wars properties take note. This is how you write a redemption arc really well.
I agree. And then also on an unserious note, I can already see the fan fictions starting right here.
Hold on.
Hauser Crosshair fanfiction.
Let's see. I could probably go to AO3 and see
the enemies to lovers archetype right here.
Oh, because I love an enemies. I love an enemies to lovers.
This is the red, white, and royal Bad Batch of all the all the fanfic.
Let me see if I can find. I can't find any just from base Googling, but I'm almost certain that this fanfic exists.
If it doesn't, Hope, if you're listening, please.
Oh, I'm sure Hope can find it for me. I'm sure
say.
Hope can find it for. In fact, I know Hope is listening to this episode. So Hope, please help me use the AO3 search engine because I'm bad at using it to find Crosshair and Hauser enemies to lovers fic, and I'll bring it back for Bradley later.
Yes, please. That's definitely content I need to read.
Oh, Lord in heaven.
Section 3. As the Batch make their way to the extraction site, they are confronted by CX2 and he begins to fire on them. Crosshair draws his fire so that they can escape, and eventually they begin to fight hand to hand, where they struggle and fall into the river. CX2 gets the upper hand and begins to drown Crosshair, but before he does, Hauser shoots CX2 in the back, causing him to fall down the waterfall. He pulls Crosshair to safety.
Man, it must suck to be named Nemec in Star Wars, huh?
I caught that when you...
Because you have to die in just like the worst, most bullshit ways.
Also random that this is now the second person to be named Nemec in like just a random like...
I don't think it's a reference. I think 2 people just named their character Nemec at the same
so weird.
time.
Yeah, just a weird coincidence. Yeah.
It's a really weird, like something happened in the cafeteria and both writing teams went back and named a character Nemec and didn't tell the other team. So now we have 2 Nemecs and they're both dead and they both died in bullshit ways while attempting to escape from a situation that had gone downhill. So there's some guy in the late Imperial, early New Republic era being born whose name is Nemec, and that guy needs to be really careful to never appear in a Star Wars.
Well, now that you said it,
Now that I've said it, it will happen. The waterfall fight is legit, like an extremely cool fight.
Yeah.
First of all, because my brain has brainworms and I can't escape 2015 Tumblr, my first thought was, oh my god, it's Reichenbach Falls. And anyway, this is just who I am as a human person. I've been irreparably damaged by having been on Tumblr in 2015 when Sherlock was coming out. Anyway, that's a digression. This fight also really good. Also very impressive with the water, like fighting down in the water.
Well, I also kind of liked, so one thing I noted is that as this fight was going on, I guess the sun is like coming up slowly. So like throughout the end of the episode, the sun is like slowly starting to come up. And I think like the scene slowly gets lighter and lighter as we get to the end of the episode. And it's just, I don't know, it's just very interesting that like it's almost like supposed to be like, oh, there's hope, kind of thing. Like, I don't know, it was a little weird, but
Wow, the sun is symbolizing hope. That's never been done in anything before, ever. It's not a very common visual shorthand.
no. But I also like how the river fight is also supposed to be kind of like a mirror, right? Like, so it's kind of be like Crosshair could have been this. So he's looking at
Yes.
what his potential future was looking like, especially when CX2 is drowning him and he can kind of see, it looks like his reflection almost in the water.
Ooh, I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's almost like CX2 when he's drowning him, it's like he's looking at Crosshair as his reflection. So it's kind of like a reverse, like, oh, this is what you could have been kind of thing. And it's really interesting how Crosshair, yeah, is basically this clone. Like this is what he was essentially going to be anyway, because he was trying to follow the Empire's, dogma or whatever. But now it's just kind of
Right.
like he's back to his, family.
I also noted, and I thought this was really interesting too, that the reason that Crosshair survives is because he has people with him.
Right.
And that's the difference between the CX Trooper and Crosshair. That's ultimately what the difference is Hauser swoops in to save his ass.
Right.
And that again goes back to the broader themes of the episode and of the show is that the clones are stronger when they're together as a group. And Hauser swoops in to save him. That's not something he would have had if he was the CX Trooper. The CX Trooper comes out of it, like the CX Trooper survives the fight, but like barely.
Section 4. The batch reaches the extraction point, but Wolf arrives with his team. He is surprised to find that Rex is the one leading the batch. Wolf asks if Rex is fighting against them. Rex responds that he is fighting against the Empire. He also reveals that the Empire is experimenting on their brothers, and Rex invites Wolf to join them, but he declines. Echo soon arrives, and Wolf allows the batch to escape. Wolf's forces depart in their shuttle. Meanwhile, CX2 climbs out of the waterfall pool alive. And in hyperspace, Hunter apologizes for the loss of Rex's men, and Rex is unwilling to give up the fight, but tells Hunter that he needs to find out why Omega is so important.
Wolf mentions in the episode that he thought Rex was dead, which was a very nice nod to the end of the Clone Wars when they fake Rex's death. Rex can't really hide now.
Yeah.
It's a little obvious where he is now. There were a bunch of witnesses to this.
Yeah, I wonder if Wolf is going to make his report and be like, oh, it was just a bunch of clones. Or if he's going to explicitly say, no, this was Rex. He never died at the battle.
Hilo's almost certainly going to file a report that says it was Rex. Like,
yeah,
they're going to know it's Rex. But I thought that was a nice nod to season 7.
Right.
And they also talk about, and Rex is like, I lost a lot of good men that day. And I'm like, yeah, you also had to bury them. You individually buried them all in graves. So the way D. Bradley Baker performs this line and the way the animators animate Rex is like, oh, that gets me right in my feelings. We do see Gregor on the ship behind Echo. I'm pretty sure we see Gregor up
I
there.
didn't catch that.
Is real brief.
Oh, okay.
I could be wrong about that because it wasn't in my original notes. I just sort of half remembered. I was like, oh, I think I saw a Gregor there. Here's my thing about this scene. So in Star Wars Rebels, we've talked a lot about Star Wars Rebels. In Star Wars Rebels, when we find Rex, he is hanging out on some random white planet with a bunch of monsters in an ATTE with him, Wolf, and Gregor. We have no idea how the three of them ended up on this random planet. We have no idea what happened to all the other clones. It's just the three of them kind of hanging out. And when Wolf showed up in the trailer for season 3, my thought was we were going to get the explanation for Wolf defecting from the Empire, or at least leaving with Rex and Gregor.
Right.
Because he's still reporting to the Empire in Rebels. That's kind of a whole plot point. That doesn't happen in this scene. he kind of stays with them, and we don't really get that major story beat. We just kind of get him figuring out Rex is alive. And I mentioned the last episode, I feel like we're now missing large chunks of the meta story with these characters. And my thought was Bad Batch was supposed to wrap this up and set the stage for Rebels. And it hasn't really done that. And it's most glaring, I think, in this scene.
Right.
Because it doesn't bring us there. It hints at another story that's yet to be told. And maybe it will turn out they will do the Clone Rebellion show. Maybe they will do like a limited series. Maybe they will do like an animated movie or something about it. But it does feel like that's noticeably missing from this story right now.
Yeah, I feel like they needed to do. I mean, I think it need more of a comic book tie-in or something quicker. Like, I just feel like it doesn't need to be a full show. I think like just a quick. I mean, the problem is it could have been an episode of this show, and it just wasn't. Like, they just didn't do it.
Again, going back to my tinfoil hat theory that
Right.
they were planning to, and then something
shortened the
happened,
season.
and they had to wrap the show up, and so they had to focus on the Tantus plot.
I agree.
That theory is looking more and more likely, and especially too considering I'm just going to jump ahead to my final note here. The conversation between Rex and Hunter, and this is the last time we will see Rex, I'm pretty sure, in this show. This is the last time we will see him, is they have a conversation, and Rex basically says, even if the odds are insurmountable, because Hunter's like, you're not going to win against the Empire. And Rex is like, even if the odds are insurmountable, we have to keep fighting. Okay, how do we get from that to I'm alone on a planet, on a
Right.
desert planet? Like, how did that happen? And it's not necessarily a criticism of this episode specifically, or even really a criticism of the show, but it definitely feels like this show spent a lot of time with the concept of the clones, only having each other in this really hostile world to them, and then didn't follow up on that, and now it feels like it's missing from the broader meta narrative between all of the visual media and the print media and everything. So that's what kind of gets me about the ending of this episode. I think maybe if it had all been building up to like Wolf defecting, like maybe if Wolf had defected, or if it had hit just a little bit harder, or I hate to say it, maybe if Rex and Gregor were the only clones that had managed to get out.
Right.
And that set the stage for, okay, now it's only going to be Rex and Gregor and Wolf eventually. But right now it does feel like this story's ongoing by the end of this show. And maybe they're planning a trilogy of shows, like Clone Wars to Bad Batch to something else. But also, like, Rebels was kind of the third entry in this.
That's what I was thinking too.
Like, almost the end of the Clone Rebellion is the Battle of Lothal.
Yeah.
When Gregor dies and they manage to retake, because then it's just Wolf. And not Wolf, just Rex. He's
Just
the only
Rex
one.
left, yeah. I don't know. Like, I do like my idea though of just doing a singular movie. I think that there is precedence for it, obviously, because we've done the Clone Wars movie before. I don't think it'll be released theatrically, but I like the idea of doing a Disney Plus only.
It will, and I will watch it. I will go see it in the theaters.
No, but I think actually, well, I will say it would be nice if
I
they
will
wanted
die mad that the strikes were on and they pulled that bullshit with putting episode 5 in the theater, and I didn't go because I was making the morally correct choice in my mind. But I will also die mad that they pulled that shit in the middle of the strike and I didn't get to see that episode.
My only other thing that I could think of doing is like if they did make a show or whatever, it would have to be, I think, for fun, a live action show, and then only get Tamora Morrison to be the character in the show, and that's it.
Sorry about what we did to you in Book of Boba Fett. Here's an entire show where you're the only character.
Literally the only person in the show.
All right. That was all the notes that I had for that.
Awesome.
We keep forgetting, because most of the time it is the same people writing and directing this show. But I do want to shout out some of the writers and directors of this episode, because there's some new people in here that we haven't really talked about.
Okay.
So on IMDb, this is credited as being written by Jennifer Corbett, showrunner for the show, and Matt Miknovitz. Looking at IMDb page, he had written on a couple of TV shows. Notably, he wrote 66 episodes of the show 24. And he started writing on Star Wars Rebels with season 2. And then he just continued to write for Star Wars. He did writing for Jedi Fallen Order, for 11 episodes of the Clone Wars, Actually, no, I lied because I just clicked on Clone Wars. He got his start writing Clone Wars because he
Oh.
wrote some episodes of season 3. He wrote the Citadel arc, the one where Echo quote unquote dies.
Ah.
Spoilers for the Citadel arc. Echo looks like he dies in that. And then he also wrote or at least, yeah, he's got a written by credit for the original Bad Batch episodes.
Oh, nice.
This is where he got his start, but he wrote episodes of Rebels. He's written episodes of this, and he had written by credits for Realization and The Way Out, the last 2 episodes of Tales of the Empire. So that's who co-wrote this episode with Jennifer Corbett. This episode was directed by Brad Rao as the supervising director, and then directed by Saul Ruiz. Saul Ruiz's directing credits are only Star Wars.
Nice.
And no other directing credits anywhere else. He got his start in season 2 of Rebels. He has directed episodes of Star Wars Resistance. He has directed episodes in season 7 of the Clone Wars. He directed the Martez Sisters arc. He's directed episodes of the Bad Batch, and he directed 4 episodes of Tales of the Jedi, and he directed episode 4 of Tales of the Empire. So the really good Inquisitor 1.
I like it.
He directed that one. He has also worked before that just as an animator, layout artist, and he had worked as storyboard artist as well for some episodes of Rebels and Resistance. That's who directed this episode. Bradley, do you have any final thoughts on this episode?
My final thoughts are, I'm glad that we didn't kill all the clones. I'm glad some of them survive, although since we never see them again the rest of the season, I don't really know what they want to do with them. We know that after, spoilers for Rebels, I guess, but like you said before, Rex is the only one who survives by the end of Rebels, and honestly, he's the only one other than, I guess we can count Boba Fett, that is a clone that survives throughout Star Wars.
I actually need to check this because I know that Rex survives Rebels, and I know that Gregor dies. Spoilers for Rebels. This is why Andy from First Steps of Star Wars podcast isn't allowed to listen to our show. Wolf survives throughout all of it. But yeah, it's basically Wolf and Rex by the end of it.
Yeah. And it's just kind of like, I guess that's fine that Wolf survived this episode, but yeah, it just doesn't, there's not a lot of like reasoning behind it other than like, oh, they have to appear in Rebels, so that's the only reason why they had plot armor this whole time. Like, that's really all it is. Other than that,
guys, that's what plot armor actually means, by the way. I just want to cut it and say, when you bitch about plot armor on the internet, plot armor actually means that you are protected by the virtue of the overall plot. So, like, yes, Wolf and Rex do actually have, and Gregor do actually have plot armor in the Bad Batch because they all appear in the Clone War or in Rebels. Fuck me, I'm getting all these animated shows mixed up.
And you want to introduce another one?
They're gonna introduce another one. They're gonna keep making these into perpetuity. That's why J Guys and Jedi is gonna continue to be a show.
So, what are your final thoughts on the episode?
I mean, it was good. I enjoyed watching it. If we were gonna end the clone plot on a high note, they did that successfully. I enjoyed it a lot. It was fun. That was it. That's
okay. Great.
Everything else I had,
okay.
I addressed in the episode itself. So, what are we covering next week, Bradley?
Next week is your favorite episode titled Bad Territory.
Look, to be fair, Bradley, I loved Bad Territory. I just thought it was weird to have a 10-minute episode and then 10 minutes of black screen.
Ooh, yeah. It's a good spoiler for what we're going to talk about
next week. It's a good spoiler for how I feel about next week's episode. I will say it's a really good episode.
I agree.
When you can see it.
I agree.
And we'll see if they subtly changed it from when I watched it when it came out.
I never thought about if they've edited since.
Because it's also possible they might have gone in and edited it back. I don't know.
We'll find out.
I don't know anybody who's watched The Bad Batch after it came out. That's a good question, actually. I need to ask some of my friends that. We will see. Pluggables. Bradley does reality TV. Find it on Peacock and Bravo. Right now we're doing The Circle on Netflix. Season 6. When are we doing another show, Bradley, from you? When's the next one coming out?
Honestly, I don't know. So I'm going to keep plugging that one until I can't plug it no more.
We're going to keep plugging The Circle until we find, Bradley is back in his home office.
Yes,
So
I'm back.
hopefully we'll see another show soon from you,
That's
Bradley.
that's true. It might come out in spring. So then maybe after we're done with Acolyte, I can start plugging something else. So
Yay. You can find me on the Star Wars TTRPG podcast set in the High Republic era with Hope, who's been mentioned several times in this episode as another one of the players, called For Light and Dice. Currently, we have split the party. It was supposed to be a one session split, and that has continued because we literally can't get back to each other. Quite funny. So my portion of the plot has just been me and Hope and Chris, who is the DM. But it's been a grand old time. I genuinely don't know what happens on the other side of the plot. So I'm listening at the same time as everyone else is. I'm finding out what's going on. And I don't want to spoil it, but there's a moment where, like, we go back to where the rest of the team was supposed to be. And Hope and I's reaction to seeing what was there, was genuine. We had no idea it was coming. So, For Light and Dice, really popping off this season. Also, I write gay books for the internet, Beach House Studios. There's going to be an announcement for that, hopefully in the next month or so. There's going to be an announcement for that's coming up. Alrighty, that's it. We made it in under an hour this time, Bradley.
woo.
Yay. I know that the episodes seem like they're under an hour, but I promise you the recordings have not been. Run the socials. Thank you for listening to this episode of Gold Squadron Gaze. Did Charles fuck something up? Email us at goldsquadrongaze@gmail.com to let us know. You can also find us on Twitter at @GoldSquadGaze, and you can find us on TikTok and Instagram at @GoldSquadronGaze. You can also find us on YouTube at our Gold Squadron Gaze YouTube channel, where we post full episodes of this show. Finally, if you liked the show, don't forget to rate us and give us a review on your favorite podcast platform. That allows other people to find our show. As always, thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gaze, and we'll see you next week. I just like seeing those two men very big and over me.
I think we all would.
These are turning into some of our dirtiest episodes.
Sometimes when these episodes are the way they are, they just present.
When you put a bunch of hot men in the episodes, it does things to our brains. Let's move on before I say something too horrible.